Shattered reflections. The champagne glass trembled in Olivia Winter's hand as she stood frozen in the doorway of her husband's office. The late-night work meeting she'd walked in on was anything but professional. Jonathan Winters, CEO of Pinnacle Investments, and her husband of 8 years, had his shirt unbuttoned and his hands tangled in the hair of Vanessa Reed, the ambitious marketing director he'd hired 6 months ago. "Olivia," Jonathan stammered, quickly pushing away from Vanessa. "This isn't... I can explain." But explanations were meaningless when confronted with such raw evidence. Olivia's mind flashed through every late night at the office, every business trip, every time Jonathan had been distant. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Vanessa didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Instead, she smoothed her skirt and gave Olivia a look that bordered on pity. "I think it's best if I leave you two to talk," she said, gathering her belongings with practiced calm. As Vanessa brushed past her in the doorway, Olivia caught the scent of her perfume, the same exclusive fragrance Jonathan had given Olivia for her birthday. The final insult. "How long?" Olivia asked once they were alone, her voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside her. "It's complicated," Jonathan replied, reaching for the decanter of whiskey on his desk. "We've been growing apart for years, Olivia. You must have felt it too." The audacity of his deflection struck her like a physical blow. "I've been by your side for 8 years, Jonathan. I left my own career to help you build Pinnacle. I managed our social connections, hosted the dinners that secured your biggest investors, edited your speeches, and stood by you through everything." Jonathan sighed, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "And I'm grateful for that. But people change, feelings change. Apparently loyalty changes too," Olivia replied, slipping off her wedding ring and placing it on his desk with a small, definitive click. "I'll be staying at the lake house tonight. Have your lawyer contact mine tomorrow." That night, as Olivia sat alone on the deck of their vacation home, watching moonlight ripple across the water, she allowed herself to truly feel the magnitude of her loss. It wasn't just her marriage that had ended. It was her identity. For years, she'd been Mrs. Jonathan Winters, the elegant, supportive wife of a financial genius. She'd sublimated her own ambitions to help build his dream. Now she was simply Olivia again, adrift in a world that viewed divorced women as failures. The financial settlement would be substantial. Her lawyer would ensure that, but money couldn't rebuild her sense of self. The society circles that had welcomed her as Jonathan's wife would quietly distance themselves. Former friends would take sides. Her contributions to Pinnacle's success would be forgotten. "They expect me to disappear," she whispered to the night air. "To become a cautionary tale." As dawn broke over the lake, Olivia made a decision. She wouldn't fight Jonathan for a larger settlement or drag his name through the mud, tempting as it was. She wouldn't become bitter or define herself by this betrayal. Instead, she would do something far more powerful. She would reclaim herself. The divorce proceedings were swift and surprisingly civil. Jonathan, eager to avoid scandal, was generous in the settlement. Olivia walked away with the lake house, a substantial financial package, and most importantly, her freedom. 3 months later, as autumn painted the city in amber and gold, Olivia signed the lease on a small commercial space downtown, far from the gleaming skyscrapers of the financial district where Pinnacle's headquarters dominated the skyline. It was time to plant the seeds of her new life, away from the shadow of what she had lost. Seeds of renewal. The small storefront on Maple Avenue seemed a world away from the marble-floored executive suites Olivia had grown accustomed to. Paint peeled from the corners of the ceiling, and the ancient hardwood floors creaked underfoot. But the space had good bones and abundant natural light, perfect for what she had in mind. "It needs work," the realtor said apologetically, watching Olivia inspect a crack in one wall. "It needs love," Olivia corrected her, already envisioning what this space could become. I'll take it. For years, while supporting Jonathan's climb to the top, Olivia had tucked away her own dreams. Before meeting him, she'd been pursuing a degree in sustainable fashion design, with innovative ideas about eco-friendly luxury textiles. She'd set it all aside to become the perfect corporate wife. Now, at 36, she was reclaiming that abandoned path. Botanical Threads would focus on high-end, environmentally conscious clothing using innovative plant-based fabrics. It was a risky venture in an industry dominated by fast fashion and established luxury brands, but Olivia had always had an eye for potential others missed. The first months were grueling. Olivia worked 18-hour days, reaching out to sustainable fabric suppliers, sketching designs, and learning the business side of fashion. She converted the back room of the shop into a small workshop where she personally created the first prototype garments. Most nights she fell asleep at her sewing table, waking with thread impressions on her cheek and renewed determination in her heart. 6 months in, with her savings dwindling and the launch date approaching, Olivia hit a critical obstacle. Her primary fabric supplier in Peru had a catastrophic equipment failure, meaning her signature bamboo silk blend wouldn't arrive in time for her debut collection. Panicking, she brought samples of her completed pieces to a local sustainable business expo, hoping to network with alternative suppliers. That's where she met Ethan Reeves. "These are remarkable," he said, running his fingers along the sleeve of a jacket she'd designed. Unlike the polished venture capitalists she was used to from Jonathan's world, Ethan had an unpretentious warmth about him. His rolled-up sleeves revealed forearms tanned from outdoor work, and his questions about her production methods were thoughtful and specific. "You know textiles?" Olivia asked, surprised by his technical knowledge. "My family has been in organic farming for generations," he explained. "We've recently branched into textile crops, hemp, flax, experimental bamboo varieties. We're trying to create closed-loop systems that benefit both the environment and local economies." By the end of their conversation, not only had Ethan offered to connect her with his network of sustainable suppliers who could help with her immediate crisis, but he'd also expressed interest in potentially investing in Botanical Threads. "I don't want controlling interest," he clarified over coffee a week later. "I believe in your vision and your expertise. Consider it a partnership where I provide some capital and connections, but you maintain creative and operational control." It was the opposite of how Jonathan's firm operated, where investments always came with strings and eventual control. Ethan's approach was refreshingly straightforward, centered on mutual values rather than just profit margins. With Ethan's help, Botanical Threads launched on schedule. The opening night exceeded all expectations, with local press covering the innovative designs and sustainable practices. Orders began coming in steadily, and Olivia hired her first 2 employees, young designers who shared her vision for fashion that didn't compromise ethics for aesthetics. As the business grew, so did her friendship with Ethan. Their weekly strategy meetings often extended into dinners where they discussed everything from regenerative agriculture to their favorite books. He made her laugh in a way she hadn't in years, and more importantly, he saw her, not as an accessory to his life, but as a whole person with her own dreams and talents. "You never ask about him?" Ethan noted one evening as they walked along the riverfront after dinner. "Your ex-husband?" Olivia considered this. "There's nothing to ask about. That chapter is closed. Most people carry their past relationships with them, either as anger or regret." "I'm not angry anymore," she said, realizing as she spoke that it was true. "And I don't regret the experience. It taught me what I don't want, which helped me recognize what I do want." Their first kiss happened naturally that night, unhurried and honest. Unlike the whirlwind passion that had characterized her early days with Jonathan, this connection with Ethan built slowly, founded on mutual respect and shared values. By the end of the first year, Botanical Threads had expanded to an online store and was featured in several prestigious fashion publications for its innovative approach. Olivia's days were full of purpose, her nights peaceful. The wounds of betrayal had scarred over, no longer raw, but simply part of the landscape of her life, a reminder of her resilience rather than her pain. What she didn't know was that across town, in the gleaming tower that housed Pinnacle Investments, the empire she had helped build was beginning to show its first cracks, hairline fractures that would soon grow into catastrophic faults. The Withering Crown. Jonathan Winters stared at the quarterly report spread across his mahogany desk, the numbers swimming before his bloodshot eyes. 3 consecutive quarters of declining profits. Major clients quietly transferring their portfolios to competitors, the board growing increasingly restless. "Mr. Winters?" His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Reed is here to see you." Jonathan sighed, straightening his tie. "Send her in." Vanessa Reed entered his office with the same confident stride that had first attracted him, though the dynamic between them had shifted dramatically since their affair had evolved into a public relationship. After Olivia left, Jonathan had quickly installed Vanessa as Pinnacle's new director of client relations, a move that raised eyebrows throughout the industry. "The Harrington account is officially gone," Vanessa announced without preamble, dropping a folder on his desk. "That's the 3rd legacy client we've lost this month." "Did they say why?" Jonathan asked, though he already knew the answer. "The usual diplomatic excuses, but Richard Harrington mentioned he ran into Olivia at some sustainability conference last month. Said her new venture is exactly the kind of innovative thinking the future economy needs." Vanessa's tone was bitter. "Seems your ex-wife still has influence in circles that matter." Jonathan rubbed his temples. He'd underestimated how deeply Olivia had connected with their client network over the years. Her quiet dignity during their divorce had earned her sympathy, while his quick relationship with Vanessa had cast him as the villain. It shouldn't matter in business, but perception was everything in the world of high finance. "We need to focus on acquiring new clients, not dwelling on those we've lost," he said firmly. "What's the status on the Maxwell Group pitch?" "Postponed." Again. Vanessa examined her manicure, a habit Jonathan once found endearing but now registered as indifference. "Their CFO wants more detailed projections after that article in Financial Weekly questioned our growth strategy." The article had been devastating, a deep dive into Pinnacle's increasingly aggressive investment approaches, suggesting the firm was taking excessive risks to maintain its growth trajectory. Jonathan suspected a leak from inside, possibly from someone loyal to Olivia, but he couldn't prove it. As the months progressed, Pinnacle's position continued to deteriorate. The toxic combination of high-risk investments going sour and client departures created a perfect storm. Jonathan found himself working longer hours, sleeping in his office more often than not. Vanessa, meanwhile, began to distance herself from the struggling firm. "I've been offered a position at Meridian Capital," she announced one evening, pouring herself a generous glass of wine in Jonathan's penthouse apartment. Once a symbol of his success, the space now felt hollow, decorated with expensive art pieces that held no meaning for him. "Meridian?" Jonathan looked up sharply. "They're our direct competitor." "They're stable," Vanessa countered, "and they're expanding their European operations. The position would be based in Paris." "So you're jumping ship?" It wasn't a question. Vanessa's laugh held no warmth. "Don't act surprised, Jonathan. We both know what this relationship was built on. Success is attractive. Failure isn't. I built Pinnacle from nothing once," he argued. "I can rebuild it." "Perhaps, but I won't wait around to find out." She set down her glass. "I've already accepted the offer. I leave next week." After Vanessa left, taking with her client contacts and insider knowledge that would further damage Pinnacle, Jonathan found himself truly alone for the first time. The social invitations that once flooded his calendar had dwindled to occasional courtesy inclusions. Friends he'd thought were loyal revealed themselves as mere fair-weather acquaintances. The final blow came when the board called an emergency meeting. After hours of tense discussion, the verdict was clear. Jonathan would remain as CEO in title, but his decision-making authority would be severely limited, with a committee of board members overseeing all major moves. "It's temporary," the chairman assured him, not meeting his eyes, "until confidence in the firm is restored." Leaving the boardroom that day, Jonathan passed the wall of framed photographs documenting Pinnacle's history. There, in an image from the company's 10th anniversary gala, stood Olivia beside him, elegant in midnight blue, her smile genuine as she spoke with clients who were now taking their business elsewhere. He'd cropped her out of the company's recent promotional materials, trying to erase her contribution to Pinnacle's success. Now he understood what a mistake that had been. That night, alone in his penthouse with a tumbler of scotch, Jonathan pulled up a business magazine article featuring Olivia's growing company. The photo showed her in the workshop of botanical threads, surrounded by vibrant fabrics and smiling employees. Beside her stood a man Jonathan didn't recognize, casually dressed with kind eyes and an unassuming confidence. The caption identified him as Ethan Reeves, sustainable agriculture entrepreneur and partner. There was something in Olivia's expression, a serene contentment he'd never seen during their marriage. It struck him then that perhaps she had never been truly happy with him, with the life he'd constructed for them both. The realization was more painful than he expected. As winter settled over the city, Pinnacle Investments continued its slow decline. Jonathan maintained the appearance of success, the expensive suits, the luxury car. But industry insiders knew the truth. The empire he had sacrificed everything for, including his marriage, was crumbling beneath him, and he lacked the tools to save it. Return of the Fallen. The Parisian rain fell in elegant sheets outside the window of Vanessa Reed's apartment in the 8th arrondissement. Once, she would have found it romantic. Now it just seemed like another inconvenience in a growing list of disappointments. 18 months into her role at Meridian Capital, the shine had worn off completely. Her corner office overlooked the Seine, but the view had lost its charm. The promised expansion of European operations had stalled, leaving her with far less authority than she'd been led to expect. Worse, her reputation had followed her across the Atlantic, not as a marketing genius, but as the woman who had helped bring down Jonathan Winters. Vanessa stared at the email on her screen, another rejection from a potential client who preferred to work with more established team members. The subtext was clear. They didn't trust her judgment after what had happened at Pinnacle. Her phone chimed with a notification from a financial news app. She almost ignored it until she caught the headline, "Botanical Threads Secures Major Investment." For global expansion. The accompanying photo showed Olivia Winters looking radiant at a press conference, standing confidently beside a distinguished panel of investors. Vanessa scrolled through the article with increasing dismay. In just 2 years, Olivia had built her sustainable fashion brand from a small boutique operation to an industry disruptor with celebrity endorsements and a devoted customer base. The new investment would fund retail locations in 3 European capitals, including, Vanessa felt a twist in her stomach, Paris. Meanwhile, her own career was stagnating. Her Parisian salary, though generous, barely covered her extravagant lifestyle in one of the world's most expensive cities. She had assumed her connection to Meridian would open doors to Europe's elite social circles, but those doors remained firmly closed to her. The French upper echelon had their own unspoken rules, and she remained an outsider. That night, over her 3rd glass of wine at a cafe where she sat alone, Vanessa made a decision. Europe had been a mistake. It was time to return to familiar ground, to rebuild her reputation and reclaim what she had lost. Perhaps even to reconnect with Jonathan, not romantically but professionally. Together they might still salvage something from Pinnacle's remains. The flight back to the States gave her time to formulate a strategy. She'd reach out to Jonathan first, feeling out his situation and suggesting a reconciliation of sorts. Her contacts at Meridian had mentioned that Pinnacle was being circled by acquisition-hungry competitors. With her international experience and his remaining connections, they might position themselves advantageously before any takeover. Vanessa checked into the Belmont Hotel, once her favorite luxury accommodation in the city. She noticed it had lost a star since her departure. The lobby less polished, the service less attentive. A fitting metaphor, she thought wryly, for how everything had changed. Her call to Jonathan went straight to voicemail. She left a carefully crafted message suggesting lunch to catch up on old times. When he didn't respond by the next day, she decided on a more direct approach. She knew his habits. He would be at Vincenzo's for lunch, the Italian restaurant near Pinnacle's headquarters, where he always ordered the same grilled salmon. Vanessa dressed meticulously for the encounter, a Dior suit that emphasized her figure without being obvious, minimal jewelry, subtle makeup that hid the fine lines that had begun to appear around her eyes. The impression she wanted was clear. Successful, confident, untroubled by the past. "Jonathan," she said, approaching. "Just returned. Paris was enlightening, but there's no place like home." She gestured to the empty chair across from him. "May I?" He hesitated, then nodded curtly. Up close, she could see the tension in his jaw, the slight tremor in his hand as he set down his phone. "I tried calling," she said, signaling the waiter for a glass of wine. "I've been busy." His tone was flat. "Pinnacle is navigating some transitions. I've heard rumors. That's actually why I wanted to talk." She leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "My position at Meridian gave me insight into how these acquisitions work. I could help you maintain control through the process, ensure you come out on top." Jonathan's laugh was short and bitter. "Still playing angles, Vanessa? Some things never change." "Business is all about angles," she replied smoothly. "We were good together professionally, Jonathan. Whatever happened personally—" "What happened," he interrupted, "was that I destroyed a 20-year marriage and alienated half my client base for a relationship that turned out to be entirely transactional." His gaze was cold. "And now that the transaction no longer benefits you, you're back to renegotiate terms." The bluntness of his assessment caught her off guard. This wasn't the Jonathan she remembered, the man easily swayed by flattery and attention. This Jonathan saw through her with uncomfortable clarity. "I'm offering a mutually beneficial arrangement," she tried again. "My European connections, your remaining influence here—" "My remaining influence isn't what it was," he said quietly. "And frankly, neither is yours. Your departure from Pinnacle made waves, Vanessa. People talk." The conversation deteriorated from there. Jonathan refused her thinly veiled offer of collaboration, making it clear that whatever they had once shared was irretrievably broken. As he paid his bill and stood to leave, he offered one parting observation. "You know, the ironic thing is that Olivia warned me about you, not out of jealousy, but because she saw what I couldn't, that you viewed people as stepping stones rather than partners. I should have listened to her." Alone at the table, Vanessa's carefully constructed facade cracked. Her triumphant return was anything but. Jonathan had moved on, not to success, but at least to self-awareness. She had neither. That evening, scrolling through social media in her hotel room, Vanessa saw an announcement that made her stomach drop. The National Sustainable Business Awards would be held that weekend at the Grand Meridian Hotel, and Botanical Threads was nominated for Innovation of the Year. The gala would bring together the city's business elite, including potential clients she had hoped to reconnect with. If she wanted to re-establish herself, that gala was the perfect opportunity. And if it meant facing Olivia Winters after all this time, well, that was a small price to pay for redemption. The Convergence. The Grand Meridian Hotel's ballroom glittered with chandeliers and ambition. The annual Sustainable Business Awards had transformed over the years from a niche gathering to one of the most prestigious events on the corporate calendar. As climate concerns reshaped markets, sustainability had become not just virtuous, but lucrative, a fact reflected in the luxury surrounding the celebration. Vanessa Reed arrived early, positioning herself strategically near the entrance where she could monitor arrivals while appearing casually engaged with the champagne reception. Her red gown, borrowed through a connection at a fashion magazine, was calculated to draw attention, a sharp contrast to the more subdued elegance typically favored at such events. She spotted Jonathan first, entering alone. Despite his diminished status, his name still warranted an invitation to significant industry functions. He moved differently now, she noticed, less of the commanding presence that once parted crowds, more of a careful navigation around groups where he might not be welcome. He didn't see her, or perhaps chose not to acknowledge her, making his way instead to the bar. At precisely 8 o'clock, a subtle shift in the room's energy announced Olivia's arrival. Flanked by Ethan Reeves and a small team from Botanical Threads, she entered with quiet confidence. Her gown, undoubtedly from her own collection, featured intricately woven sustainable fabrics in shades of deep green that seemed to capture and reflect light in mesmerizing patterns. Unlike Vanessa's calculated appearance, Olivia's beauty radiated. From within, the serene power of a woman who had nothing to prove. "She looks happy," a voice said beside Vanessa. She turned to find Jonathan, tumbler in hand, watching his ex-wife from across the room. "Happiness is overrated," Vanessa replied, trying to maintain her composure. "Success is what matters in this world." "She has both," Jonathan observed. "That's the difference between her path and ours. We chased success at all costs. She built something meaningful." Before Vanessa could respond, the cocktail hour ended, and guests were directed to their tables for dinner. By some cosmic joke, or perhaps deliberate seating chart manipulation, Vanessa found herself at a table adjacent to Olivia's, close enough to observe, but far enough to avoid direct interaction. Throughout dinner, she watched as business leaders, investors, and media figures gravitated toward Olivia and Ethan. Their table buzzed with genuine laughter and animated conversation, while Vanessa picked at her sustainably sourced salmon in silence, occasionally nodding at the strangers seated with her. Jonathan, she noticed, had been placed at a table of minor players, a reflection of Pinnacle's fallen status. He maintained a dignified facade, but the slight droop of his shoulders betrayed his awareness of how far he had fallen. After the meal came the awards presentation. Botanical Threads was announced as a finalist in 3 categories: Innovation, Community Impact, and the coveted Entrepreneur of the Year. When Olivia's name was called for the Innovation Award, the room erupted in applause that felt more personal than professional, more admiration than mere acknowledgement. Olivia's acceptance speech was gracious and brief. She thanked her team, acknowledged Ethan's partnership, and spoke passionately about creating fashion that honored both people and planet. No mention of her past, no veiled references to overcoming betrayal. She spoke entirely in the present tense, rooted in what she had built rather than what she had lost. As the formal program concluded and guests mingled over dessert, Vanessa found herself drawn toward Olivia's orbit, propelled by a complicated mixture of curiosity, envy, and something like remorse. She intercepted her target at the edge of the dance floor, where Olivia had paused to speak with a young designer. "Congratulations on your award," Vanessa said, when the conversation ended and they were momentarily alone. "Quite an achievement in such a competitive category." Olivia turned, her expression shifting from surprise to something unreadable. "Vanessa, I heard you were back from Paris." News travels fast. In some circles. Olivia's gaze was direct but not unkind. Are you staying long? That depends on opportunities. Vanessa gestured vaguely around the room. I'm exploring options. A charged silence stretched between them. Two women whose lives had collided so dramatically, now standing as strangers in evening wear. I never apologized, Vanessa said, suddenly the words surprising her as much as they seemed to surprise Olivia. For what happened? Olivia studied her for a long moment. Would you have? If things had worked out differently? At least you're honest now. A ghost of a smile touched Olivia's lips. That's something. Aren't you going to tell me you're grateful? Vanessa asked, an edge creeping into her voice. That's what wronged wives are supposed to say, that the betrayal led them to something better. Olivia shook her head. I'm not grateful for the pain, but I am responsible for what I built afterward. That distinction matters. Before Vanessa could respond, Ethan appeared at Olivia's side, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. Sorry to interrupt, he said, acknowledging Vanessa with a nod. They're asking for a photo with all the winners for the press release. Of course. Olivia turned to go, then paused. Vanessa, whatever you're looking for, I hope you find it. But it won't be in the past. As Olivia walked away, Vanessa felt a presence beside her and turned to find Jonathan, watching their interaction with tired eyes. She's extraordinary, he said quietly. I never really saw it when we were together. What do we do now? Vanessa asked, an unexpected vulnerability in her question. Jonathan considered for a moment. We start over, not together. That bridge is burned, but separately, with honesty this time. Across the room, Olivia stood with her team, award in hand, Ethan's arm around her waist. The photographer counted down, and on 1, Ethan whispered something that made Olivia laugh, a genuine, unguarded moment of joy captured in flash. I need to leave the city, Jonathan said suddenly. There's a position at a small firm in Seattle. Environmental investment. It's a step down in prestige, but maybe a step up in purpose. Seattle is a long way, Vanessa observed. As the evening wound down, guests began to depart. Vanessa watched as Olivia and Ethan left hand in hand, surrounded by their celebrating team. Jonathan slipped away alone, nodding goodbye to her from across the room, a final acknowledgement of their shared mistakes. Standing in the emptying ballroom, Vanessa made an unexpected decision. Instead of pursuing the connections she'd planned to cultivate, she walked to the hotel's business. The final piece. He closed her fingers around it. The lighthouse keeper's cottage. I bought it this morning. The lighthouse. Understanding dawned. My studio? He nodded. Your permanent studio. No matter where life takes us. The city, abroad, wherever. You'll always have this place to return to. Your sanctuary. Tears welled in her eyes at the perfect symmetry of his gift. Not a possession or obligation, but freedom and roots intertwined. You really do understand, don't you? I'm learning. His smile held all the words they'd once left unspoken. We both are. As they walked back along the cliff path, Theo running ahead to chase seagulls, Olivia realized that some silences weren't empty voids, but fertile ground where the deepest truths take root. The space between words could harbor fear and misunderstanding, yes, but also growth, healing, and the quiet certainty of belonging. Their story hadn't ended with dramatic declarations or grand gestures. Instead, it had unfolded in small moments of courage, morning coffees shared in comfortable silence, trust rebuilt through kept promises, and the gradual recognition that sometimes love speaks most clearly, not in what is said, but in what is done. Behind them, the lighthouse began its evening rotation, its beam cutting through gathering dusk to guide travelers home. Ahead of them, their son's laughter beckoned them forward into a future they were writing together. One word, one day, one choice at a time. The silence that had once divided them had transformed into something else entirely, the peaceful quiet of coming home.